What up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Broadcast Hoops, talking college basketball. It's about to be college basketball season. If you didn't check out our last episode, check that out. We talked about all things transfer portal and big time transfers coming in for this upcoming season. But there's an elephant in the room as far as college athletics is concerned, and we got to touch on that today. Of course, I'm Jamal Murphy. Got my man Chris Walker in the house. What's up, man? How you been?
I'm great, man. I'm great, man. Just chilling, man. Trying to get some sleep these days. You already know what time it is.
Oh yeah. No question. Get that sleep. Get those power naps in. But yeah, man. So obviously, we got college basketball coming up. We got college football real soon. But we got to touch on this NIL business. We haven't talked about it yet. Haven't gotten your opinion on all that's going on with NIL. So let's just get into it. Name, image, and likeness is alive and well. Kids are, some kids are starting to get paid. Um, Schools are using it to their advantage. What's your overall feel of where we are as far as name, image, and likeness goes so far?
Listen. The first thing that comes to mind is why the hell was it not around when I was a player? My goodness, and we could talk about. I definitely want to talk about what that would be like if I was a kid. Being able to garner 500 grand, 300 grand, be in college, make more money than the coaches, assistant coaches, that is. Uh, and then, but that's the behavioral part. Let's talk about that later. But I, for one, believe it was long overdue. I've said this to my colleagues. They thought I was joking. I just saw the tea leaves. I said, it is wrong. It was wrong then, and it's wrong now. Now, obviously, we're trying to mitigate it, and it's somewhat, you and I being of, African American descent, we know what the word reparations mean in this country, and what we're having is athletic reparations.
That's
It's
right.
really what's going on right now, and so, when I look at a guy like Jalen Brown, and great player, really good kid, making 300 million. And I look at
Mm,
a guy like Dr. J, who's one of the top 75 players ever, and what he made as a player back then, even if they thought it was a lot, is nothing compared to what a guy like Jalen Brown makes. And I'm not saying Jalen Brown's not a great player, but we're talking about Dr. J.
right.
So there are a lot of great players that played in college basketball. I can name tons of them when you and I were coming up. I mean, tremendous college players that never got a chance to play in the NBA. Imagine what actually, forget about the guys that had a chance playing that didn't have a chance. Let's talk about the guys that did. Remember a player like Rodney Monroe that played at NC State?
Yep.
Remember him back in the
Yep.
day? What
Yep.
about Kenny Anderson? What kind of NIL he have gotten?
Mm,
LJ, Grandmama. I mean,
mm.
we could name Terry Mills. I mean, Chris Mills. The other Mills that went to Michigan. I mean, I could name
Alonzo. Remember Alonzo Mourning back in the day?
Kendall
Everybody wanted
Gill,
him.
Alonzo Mourning. I mean, you go dude, Brian Shorter at Pitt.
What
Remember
about
him?
What about Christian Leitner? He would have made a killing.
Oh my God, Bobby Hurt, like these Grant Hill, like these guys would have made so much money,
Yeah.
and we were the Kirk Floods of the era, and we laid the groundwork, and so thank God, finally legislation has passed because it's right, Jamal. It's right. Universities have made money forever. They always lament. They're like the owners of franchises. They always cry about how much money that the players are making. Or if you look at social media, or you look at the people of the world, the layman compares himself to the player and not the owner. He
Right.
puts himself on the same plane. Oh man, I only make this. He should shut up and play. Dude, the owner is a billionaire. What are you talking about? You know what I'm saying? And
Right.
I make that parallel to college sports. I'm like, hold on. So the school should make millions, and the kids should just get, again, not that there's anything wrong with that. I got a great education going over, but give me a break. The school is making millions. The coach is making hundreds of thousands and millions, and the player should get nothing. Before you jump in, I always make this point, right? This parallel. I remember watching this. It was the Sonny Vaccaro scenario, right? Remember
Yeah.
the movie Air?
Yep.
And I remember when I was doing research for that, because I got a show coming out that's similar to that I've shown you. Jim Boeheim, man, I don't even want to put his name out there, but some coaches back then, when they were getting shoes, so people don't know how the grassroots thing started. Coaches used to get shoe money,
Right.
right, from Nike and certain schools. That would be a part of their contract to make the players wear Nike, and that was how they, promoted Nike.
Right.
The coaches got more money from the shoe companies than they got from the school, so
Yeah.
they may have been making 50,000 in the early 80s, 60,000. Now they make millions, right? Well, college scholarships were cost-free back then. Jamal, they're cost-free now, but the players don't make millions.
Right.
They always
Right.
find a way to justify it. And
I mean, all these big TV deals. I mean, they're
oh my
making
God.
football and basketball, all kind of money, all
Right,
kind of money. This is,
right.
it's entertainment for everybody.
But Jamal, I remember, and this is funny, I remember playing, people are going to laugh, EA Sports, basketball, and playing with myself as the person playing from
Right.
Villanova and not getting one dime.
Right.
So Ed O'Bannon, that whole thing just blew the doors open. And now and people think it's crazy, but the NIL era is here to stay. It's right. Now you could talk about, should you have legislation around it? I used to say this all the time and people used to laugh at me. I said, let me get this right. So Kyle Field at Texas A&M, they put a $400 million renovation on it. They can't put a $350 million renovation and give 50 to the players?
Right.
What's wrong with that? They're the ones that they're playing. I don't get it, because they use that to lure the players there. And then if people want to say, oh, Chris, you're ridiculous, they're getting an education. Okay, well, let's have a conversation about that. When a kid graduates from Texas A&M, what's the average salary that they make? Let's take the smartest guy at A&M. Forget about the athlete. What's the average salary that they make? What's the average salary at Georgetown they make when they graduate with that degree? And tell me what they make in 10 years. And then you're talking about a $400 million renovation where they're bringing in TV deals where they get profit sharing. And that's what's coming next, Jamal. That's the next domino to fall. They're going to have to profit share with these TV deals.
Yeah. No, I mean, I look at it like these kids, you talk about kids getting an education, and yes, they're going to school for free, but they're not just going to school. It's basically labor. They're laboring and bring in all kinds of money. Okay. So there's no way around it. You have to look at it like that. Then kids who play a big time sport in college, football, basketball, baseball, whatever, that's a full-time job if you want to stay on that team. You're not, those kids are not, you cannot really, concentrate on academics like the average kid can. Okay. You have to forego certain classes, or you got your coaches telling you what you should and shouldn't take, to lessen your load. You have to practice for how many hours a day. Right. And you doing that is, like you said, is bringing in boatloads of money that the colleges have been allowed to get away with for how many years? Since the beginning of time, since the beginning of this college athletics experience.
But here's the crazy thing. You say you have to practice so many hours. That's just with the team.
Right.
There's also individual time you need to hone your craft.
Right.
You don't get the practice during the game. You work on your individual skills outside of it, so that's more time. So let me run you through the day of an athlete. Get up at 6 a.m. You probably got early workouts, right? Then you got to leave the early workouts, hopefully get something to eat. Then you go to class. Some days you have a lighter load than others. Let's say you go to class. That's if you went to bed the night before. It's college, by the way.
Right.
So you could be tired. Now, guess what? You go to class, and then you probably have an individual workout during that day with a coach or a film session, whatever it is. Then you got to go back to another class. Then you may go to your room for 5-10 minutes, and you may have to go to a tutoring session. That's if you don't have another class before practice at 3. Then you practice from 3 to 6. 3 to 6, now you got treatment. Then you got to go to study hall. Then you get back to your room at 9-10 o'clock, and you want social time. You may have a girlfriend or some friends. Guess what? It's 1 o'clock in the morning. And guess what you got to do the next day? Go back to practice or an early workout for 6 a.m. You know what that's called? That's called a job. That's what that's called.
Right.
So when they say like, oh, they should be happy to get the education, people that talk like that have never gone through it.
Right. Of course.
They've never gone through it. And they don't get the real college experience where kids get to go to frat parties and all that. They may get it in the off season, but you practice now in the off season. There is no off season when you're at a high level, when you're trying to play for a championship at Georgia, or you at Kentucky and Villanova trying to play for a championship, or you trying to make it to the next level and be a professional athlete. There are no days off, because we talk about professional athletes. LeBron, as soon as he years old, he may take a small break. He's working on his body. There's no days off. They just make millions of dollars, Jamal.
And only a small percentage make it to the NBA or the NFL, as you know, right? So most of these kids, who are playing for these universities, they're not gonna clean up on the next level. They're not gonna make the next level. This is their time. This is the time that they put in to make the university all kinds of money. Period. So, I mean, there's no question it's a blessing that now that these players can reap some of the benefits of their labor. And it's funny you brought up Sonny Vaccaro. I interviewed him on a different podcast that I do, and he said his biggest regret is not being able to give the money directly to the players back then when he was doing all those sneaker deals with the coaches, because
100%.
that's what was allowed, and he couldn't fathom that the NCAA would ever let the players get the money. But of course, that's who should have gotten it all along. And he acknowledges that.
Biggest injustice to me, and it's finally happened. The Hall of Fame, however they want to do their political stuff, taking forever to put Guy B. Lewis in the Hall of Fame, ridiculous, right? And others get in, I shake my head, whatever. And Rolly Massimino should be in the Hall of Fame. It is absolutely ridiculous. That win was the watershed win that made people fall in love with the NCAA to me, other than the Magic Bird game, right? When Michigan State played Indiana State, the Villanova-Georgetown upset, which I cried that night because I was a major Georgetown fan, and knowing what Georgetown culture was, particularly to the Black community, and for that school to take them down, right, before the three-point shot was instituted, and what they did was a miracle in Lexington. For that man, for the Final Eights that he's been to, for the career he's had, to not be in the Hall of Fame, he's finally got a bench there, should be in. The next person that I have a grievance with that's not in the Hall of Fame is Sonny Vaccaro. As a contributor, he changed the way we look at sports. If you watch the movie Air, I love Nike, but if you can't talk about that without talking about Sonny, he should be in the Hall of Fame. Right? Then you take it to, if you know anything about Kobe Bryant and Tracy McGrady and Adidas Grassroots, he was a guy. Yeah, Kevin Garnett went to the NBA first, but it was still Sonny pushing that narrative.
Right.
And he helped our community, right? Where you're talking about guys, I forget Moses Malone, and who was the guy before Moses Malone that went to the NBA? I forget his name. Oh my God, that challenged the rule, because that's what was happening. Oh my God, I can't forget his name right now. The other NBA guy that challenged the rule that went straight to the NBA.
Was it Spencer Haywood? Did he do that? Spencer Haywood, did he do that?
No, it might have been him, but it was I'm thinking of somebody else. But the bottom line is, and Spencer as well, but the bottom line is, what I'm saying is that was an initiative by Sonny Vaccaro. Like, why should you go to college? Why can't you do this, Kobe? Why can't you do this, T-Mac? Why can't you do this, Dwight Howard? Why, like, you start naming them, Jermaine O'Neal's and all those guys. That was spearheaded by Sonny Vaccaro.
Yeah.
And again, guess what else was spearheaded by him? The Ed O'Bannon case.
Yes.
This is what Sonny has been screaming forever to the NCAA, and he's been much maligned. On the other side, politically, people have made him an enemy, and now look what's happening. He should reap the benefits, and before he, goes to the next life as a saint, we call him Saint Vaccaro because I've known him forever. He should be in the Hall of Fame because he is the original guy that has pushed the name, image, and likeness.
No question about it, and that's one of the reasons he's not in the Hall of Fame, is because he rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. A lot of greedy people who wanted to keep the money for themselves. He spoke out against it, and these were powerful people.
Yeah, they're definitely powerful people. And I'll tell you this, and Jamal, think about this, and I'll say this to people who will disagree with me about NIL, because I've had guys talking to me for years, and I can go back and pull stuff where I've said publicly, players should get paid, players should get paid, players should get paid. And I'll tell people this: history is written by the winners. It's written by the winners. Unless you were there going through it. I don't know what the Civil Rights Act movement was like, but I question whether I would be tough enough to go to jail and be bitten by dogs. I'd be like, I'm a tough dude, but
seriously,
those people are tough. Kurt Flood Think about what people, you talking about Shohei and Tani, they were talking about this dude almost getting $1 billion or some crazy, or 100 million, 900 million, whatever he's getting, Aaron Judge. How many of them even know who Kurt Flood is?
Right.
And what he went through and what he lost? So guys can enjoy free agency because they had the reserve clause back then.
Right.
The way athletes, the way, is it Jonathan Allen with the Colts? The way he's forcing his way, the way Harden has forced his way, like, being upset. The guy saying that I don't want to be here anymore. I'm not playing.
Right.
And my thing is, some of that is contractual. They should have to stay. And you look at Damian Lillard now and what he's going through at Portland. But that stuff happened because of Kurt Flood.
Right. Right.
Is Kurt Flood in the Baseball Hall of Fame? He should be in the Baseball Hall of Fame. Because
no, he should be. Yeah, they're same as Vaccaro. There's a push to try to get him in, but resistance also
changed American sports as we know it. So now, Chris? Why are you bringing up Kurt Flood? Because not only baseball benefited from it, but every other sport did. And how many hockey players know who Kurt Flood is?
Right.
How many baseball players coming over from the Dominican, come over from Puerto Rico, know who Kurt Flood is and why? Fernando Tatis and all the money he's making, or Manny Mercado. I mean, I'm just saying, do they even know who this guy is? So now talk about NIL. The reason why I say that, not to besmirch those guys, bemoan those guys, but do you know what the NIL has done? Let's have a real conversation. There are two sports that drive this narrative, and you can tell me if I'm wrong.
Right.
Football.
Yes.
So you see what's going on in conference realignment, and men's basketball. I dare anybody to counter it. Let's bring the numbers out.
Right.
Now, but guess what? And guess what the lion's share of the kids who play those sports are? Kids that look like you and me.
Right. Right. Especially at the level that brings in the money.
Exactly. They're driving the narrative.
Right.
So sometimes when I see people saying they don't want to pay them, again, I get my feelings in the air because I'm like, well, what do you mean? We're driving the market. Like we drive the NBA, like we drive the NFL. Like, why shouldn't we get it? And sometimes, unfortunately, people think like, well, they should just be happy to get a degree. When in our neighborhoods, not all of us, it's changing a lot. Getting the money or getting to the resources or having access to capital is the number one thing we don't have.
Right.
So getting to the NBA or the NFL or the MLB, to a lot of people may be the apex of it, but to kids coming from our neighborhoods, getting to college and getting NIL is the pros.
Exactly. And it's very, I talk about the percentage of kids that are able to make professional leagues. It's very small, but so is the percentage of kids who can play Division I sports of any kind. You still have to be an elite level athlete to do that. And I think a lot of times when you hear people, besmirch NIL, rail against it, it's because I don't think they appreciate, how hard it is to get to that level, to get, to be a Division I athlete that's playing at a big time school, that's bringing in major money. They think, these kids are just born. And when I say these kids, for the most part, Black kids, right? People look at us or our kids and say, oh, well, they're a natural athlete, oh, they're just lucky. They were born with that athleticism, and they're born with those skills. No, how and you mentioned this before. All you have to go through the workouts, way before you get to college, of course, just to get to that level. All the time you have to put into your craft. People don't understand. They think these kids are just born with this talent.
Yeah, you can be born. You can be born tall.
Right.
You could be born fast. I believe that certain people can, you can make yourself faster. I believe Beyonce was born with a gift.
Right.
Right. I believe models are born with a certain body type. Right. I believe that. You know what I mean? There's certain people are born with certain vocal cords where they can sing different than others.
Right.
But at the end of the day, just because you can sing at church don't make you Beyonce. Don't make you Tina Turner. Right. I mean, I'm just saying, like, there's some other things there are certain things that we have in our community called favor. God puts favor on certain people are just touch, and they have the ability to do things that others, no matter how hard they try, they can't reach that level of those heights. Right. And so when people say like, oh, they're just born with that, that's not true. Because, and I'll say this again, not to get into like a difference or a racial conversation, just because let's take baseball for a second. I'm gonna jump off topic for a second. People, you would think, or you would believe, and I'd like to get your opinion, that black kids don't play baseball. When I was a kid, Jamal, I wanted to be Dave Parker, Dave Winfield, those type of guys. Yep. Davey Lopes. You remember the era I'm talking about? New York family, Willie Stargell, you know, Darryl Thomas with the Dodgers, like Dusty Baker. That's what I grew up in, that era where basketball in the 70s wasn't even popular. It wasn't even, people wanted to be baseball players when we were kids. It was the national pastime. That is very true. My grandfather I want to be a baseball player because Jackie Robinson, Hank Aaron, those are the guys, Willie Mays, that were our heroes.
Yep.
It wasn't Magic Johnson. You know what I'm saying? That was the 80s. Later on, when we were kids, it was baseball. So now, fast forward to now, you trying to tell me there ain't more Mookie Betts out there? You're trying to tell me that to some of no, because the MLB has made a concerted effort to bring, again, and thank God, to bring players from the Dominican Republic and so forth and make the game more national. And there are financial ramifications of said activity, the same way the NBA. Think about it. In the community of the AAU world, you would think white kids don't play basketball anymore. I'm like, man, there's a bunch of white kids that play basketball. Right. For some reason, and I don't know, because I know a bunch of white kids that can play, it doesn't translate into college as much, or more importantly, the NBA. They bring them from Europe. If you look at how many American-born white players, I would ask you right now, I'm gonna put you on the spot, because I sat with some GMs in Vegas, and I was like, man, why don't y'all like white kids? I mean, not like white them, but like, why don't y'all draft them? Right. Who are the top 5 white American-born players in the NBA right now? I know we're all, but this is that's the people know, like, this is what's going on, because sometimes you got to pull the wool over things to say like, oh wow, I didn't even realize that. Because just so you know, Jokic, Dirk,
no,
Porzingis, none of them count. Luka don't count. You know what I'm saying? We keep going. So now, give me your top 5 American-born.
I can't even think. I know DiVincenzo. I'm just gonna throw names I could think of.
That's one.
Chet Holmgren's young.
Chet Holmgren.
But who else is there really?
Evan Herter.
Yes.
Yep. I'm just saying.
There's I can't even name 5 off the top of my head.
The kid from the Lakers.
Wild.
Kid from the Lakers.
Yes, Austin Reeves.
Kid Caruso.
Yep.
Kevin Love. You see what happens? Yeah. So you're telling me that white kids can't play basketball in America? That's not true. You know, they choose, the NBA chooses to bring kids from Europe. So when Michael Jordan played, and people get mad at me when I talk about why I believe LeBron's better than Jordan, you know, and I know you disagree. Well, I said when Jordan played the game in the 80s and the 90s, how many European players in the game?
Not many. I know, Kukoc has just come. You had Sabonis, Arvydas Sabonis.
Who's the kid?
Detlef Schrempf. Remember him? Yeah, Petrovic.
Detlef Schrempf.
Yep. It was a handful. It was a handful.
It's like 100 now.
Oh yeah.
So is the game better or worse since we've made it more global? We had to send our players to play in the Olympics while the Dream Team. Think about it. We had to send our best players to hold serve.
Oh, no question about it.
I think the game is better.
Of course it is. The game has evolved. The game gets better. Not everything, but most things get better. You know, as people, have more information, better training, information, all that kind of stuff. Better doctors now, better technology. So yeah,
better everything, harder, faster. I don't mean they're tougher, but they may be faster. So again, I'm being circuitous. I make this roundabout, I'll go off a little diatribe here, but just so people can think a little bit, just to get into their minds. NIL, we talked about, and just to bring it back to, the kids, the predominant kids that play it are African-American kids of the sports that are revenue-driving sports. That's just reality. Coach Chris Walker ain't making it up. But right. Guess who gets to benefit from it? As I said, Kirk Flood, right? Kirk Flood did it in baseball, hockey, every other sport gets a benefit from free agency, right? You know who benefits from it? Girls that do gymnastics.
Yes.
Boys that play tennis.
Yes.
Boys that play golf.
Right.
girls that play basketball. I'm just saying, like, people don't realize it's spearheaded because these other guys are making so much money. No, and again, not even to talk negative about the other sports. It's not that. But NIL wouldn't exist if we were talking about golf.
Right.
NIL wouldn't exist if we were talking about the Olympic sports like swimming and rowing. It wouldn't happen.
Right.
But again, the people that play those sports that, oh, I can't believe the football players are getting this foot. You better be glad they're getting it. But because they're getting it, it allows you to, guess what? Benefit of your name, image, and likeness.
Exactly.
There are some women out there that are making more name, image, and likeness than the football players at Alabama.
That's true. That's true.
That's the reality of it.
Women's basketball players are taking full advantage of it.
Exactly. But I'm saying there are girls that are in the Olympics, right? Maybe do gymnastics in the Olympics, and they are doing gymnastics at a college here, and they're raking in dollars NIL. It's just not popular like football and basketball, the NCAA tournament.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
It really is true.
Right.
So the thing is, everybody gets to benefit from what these other kids are driving and still driving.
Yeah. No, and I think, and the blowback is what we've been talking about. I mean, there was a senator who was, they're trying to create legislation, or the NCAA is trying to lobby Congress to create legislation to kind of haul this stuff in to make it so that these kids can't make as much money as they're making, or at least selected kids can't make as much. And you had a senator, Rand Paul, say about a couple of weeks ago, hey, I used to love college sports, but now, these kids, driving around in Bentleys, looking like rappers. This dude actually said that, looking like rappers.
I love to run against him. I love to run against him.
Right.
So ignorance.
That shows you where the where this comes from.
What's funny?
Down, people who don't agree with it.
Jamal, I mean to cut, but if a kid comes from wealth, let's say he grows up wealthy, and he drives a Bentley on campus. Anybody got a problem with that? You know what they're gonna say? Well, he's wealthy. Right. It costs $80,000 a year to go here.
Right.
He probably went to a private high school. They probably got a house in Martha's Vineyards. They probably got a house on Nantucket or wherever, or a house in Montauk. Right. We're expected. That's what they're supposed to have that. But another kid who has a specific sport that he wasn't given, because when you grow up in wealth, you didn't earn that. You were given that. Yeah, your daddy may have earned it, or his dad may have earned it, or mom may have earned it, but you were given that. So just because a kid now can do something or get something where he actually earns it, because now you're discounting what he did as a kid, his training in high school, what his parents probably driven him from point to point for years on time, and jumping on subways to become everybody forgets that. But it's okay to talk about the guy who came from nothing and rose up from his bootstraps and went to school or came from wealth. They don't look at it the same way. So that kid should not be able to have that.
They don't like that. They don't like that. They don't like. I mean, it's
ridiculous. Like, I'm like, dude, like, do you understand what you're saying? So you grew up. So Rand Paul is from Kentucky,
right?
The Wildcats. Adolph Rupp. Do I need to keep going?
Right. He liked it when they weren't making money. Why?
Exactly. Why? It was wrong. If you get the guy who started the NCAA, or the one who built the model, he said in 20 to 30 years, this model will be obsolete. And here's the thing, Jamal, and I've said this time and time again to people. And it comes back. And again, I wrote a book called Elephant in Our Room. And I hate to make a lot of things about race, but unfortunately, people only want to talk about race during political times, when it comes time to voting. We can't talk about any other time. And I'm not just talking about things that happen outside our community. The Elephant in Our Room, the book I wrote, is talking about things that happens within our community, because I think you have to attack things from the inside out and not always the outside in.
Right.
What's our mindset? If we really wanted to change this, the University of Missouri, remember what happened in Missouri when the football team refused to play in that bowl game?
Yep.
And look what happened.
Yep.
The problem is, when it comes to us, sometimes we're like, well, I got to go to Alabama because that's my only way. I'm like, but they should be paying you. And again, if you had a kid, So it's easy for me to say that I don't have a child that's going to have a chance that's really good and could go to Alabama. You're like, well, I need that. I need Alabama. And if I don't have Alabama, I have nothing. I'm like, but if all y'all band together and say y'all ain't playing, guess what they're going to do? They're going to pay you.
Right.
If all of you band together and say this is wrong, guess what they're going to do? They're going to bend.
Right, because they need you.
Exactly. They need you. And again, this may be unpopular to say, well, they were born with this. Well, okay, well, there's kids that play in the SWAC. They don't play Alabama. Like, everybody's not born with a specific skill. That's not true.
Right. Right.
But
very few. There are very few freaks.
But you also, the kids can't pick themselves.
Right.
They get recruited. They don't get to choose a school and just say, I want to go without being recruited. So who are we putting this onus on? Well, they only so is it the kids or the ones choosing them? They don't get to draft themselves.
Right.
It's the people or the organization that's drafting.
Well, let me ask you this, because one of the things that bothers me most is when I hear coaches complain about it, and coaches know all the stuff we're talking about. Coaches are close to the athletes. They know, they recruit them. They've been around for years. They know the hard work that goes into it, and also they benefit from these kids that sometimes that are receiving NIL. So why is it you have these coaches out here, crying about NIL and what's doing to the sport? And you're close to a lot of coaches.
You know what it is? What I tell, first of all, here's what I tell coach. Hey man, here's the deal. You're the coach at Jamal Murphy University. You make $2 million a year. Here's what I'm gonna tell you. If you don't like it, leave. There's 50 million dudes ready to step in that seat and do your job. So what you don't like is the control. What don't you like about it? Well, these parents, you're a parent. How would you be? Put yourself in their shoes. If you had an elite athlete that can garner this type of money and you came from nothing, even if you came from something, because Jamal, what I tell people is this, that if the sports were the Olympic sports, where some of the parents may have gone to college and came from means, financially, they would never let this happen if they knew those schools were making that type of money and their kids weren't getting part. They would never let it happen. Never.
Right.
Only because we come from different social and economic situations, and it's been set up that the only way my kid is going to get to where he got to get to is to go to college and then hopefully get to the pros. We need college. Well, I didn't go to school. I need my child to go to school so we can change, the socioeconomic legacy of our community, right? That's why it's that way. So when coaches say that, I think it's like they're tone deaf. I'm like, bro, do you just recruited this kid? Look at his life. Don't just look at him. Look at his parents' life. I always tell coaches, you're the last line of defense before this boy becomes a man. In high school, they call it boys basketball. Guess what they call it in college? Men's basketball. You're the last line of defense. You know what I'm saying? So you have more of an onus to do more, not just to make him a good basketball player, but make him a man who can go into society and be hireable, be a functional adult. That's hard. That's work. That's intentional. That's emotional intelligence. And some of these coaches, they're not equipped, Jamal. They just get the chance because they work themselves up the ladder. They have not worked on themselves. Coaches all times tell kids, hey man, you got to work on yourself in the summer. You got to work on your game. How many coaches work on their game?
Right.
How to relate to people, relate to parents, be held accountable. How many? And we pay these guys millions of dollars based on what the kids do.
Right. And there's that greed, it's that greed from coaches. They're thinking about themselves. And that's a terrible thing when you're basically in charge of young kids' development and of any race or culture, period.
Exactly.
It's a terrible thing.
But I'll tell you this, Jamal. So just to put a button on an NIL thing, which is hilarious to me. When I was a coach, I coached for 20 plus years. It used to be, man, they're on TV every game. We got to get on TV. You know what those same coaches complain about NIL saying? Man, we can't get on TV like the other teams. This is wrong. They use it against us in recruiting. Okay, now guess what? You got streaming, you got ESPN, you got CBS, you got NBC, you got people on sports a lot more than before. They even had an antitrust thing in football.
Every game is on TV now.
Every game's on TV. So that's not a recruiting thing anymore. So a lot of people can't complain about that. The next thing was, Man, these people got practice facilities where they can use like eye recognition, cornea recognition, and they have a facility. We need that. So you're gonna go to school just because they have a practice facility? That now, guess what? Everybody got a practice facility. So they don't boo-hoo about that anymore. Guess what the next thing was? Man, we're a Nike school, we're a Jordan school. You're gonna go to school just because they're wearing Nike and not under. I'm just saying it doesn't end. And then they had cost of attendance. Cost of attendance because the bigger, higher tier football schools were like, hey, we got to do something to help these kids if you don't want us to cheat.
Right.
Because if we don't want to buy them a burger because the cafeteria closes at 6. And guess what? He's hungry at night. He plays football. He plays basketball. He has no money. So cost of attendance is the money that's left over after scholarships. And then guess what? Some schools could pay more than others. And then guess what the coaches are doing? It's not fair. I'm just telling you. So guess what it is now? NIL. And guess what guys are saying? It's not fair. It's never going to end. Hey, man, give the money back. Go sell insurance and let somebody else who's willing to roll their sleeves up, get to their alums and figure it out. Because the guys with the most money, look at the Yankees right now.
Yeah, it doesn't always work out.
Doesn't
always work out. That's not, and I love what you're saying because it's always something, and there's always an excuse, and they're making the excuse now, and they're trying to get Congress involved to rein all this in, so kids can't make as much money. So there's almost like a salary cap they're basically trying to put in, so kids will not be able to realize their actual wealth as they're doing right now. And what all this has done for me, really, NIL as we see it now, is let me know how much money there really is in these sports that these colleges can offer millions of dollars to a kid that reportedly $1 million for a kid who's like a role player sometimes. There've been big NIL deals for guys that didn't even make all ACC or things like that. So the money is there. I don't see them cutting coaches' salaries now because they have to pay the kids. That just shows you how much money is actually there.
And here's the thing: a lot of those coaches' salaries aren't even paid by the universities. Especially state schools, they pay them out, and then the coaches get like a talent fee, and the boosters pay the rest.
Right. Just like the sneakers,
paying for the players.
Sneaker deals you were talking about.
It's the way it should be. I'll tell you this: how much money is Coco Golf? How much is Coco Golf worth? What college she go to? Right. What college Naomi Osaka? Where she go to college? So why is it that she's allowed to make money? I'm not even railing against them. Where did Serena go to college? Where did Venus go to college?
Right.
Where did Tiger? I mean, Tiger went to college, but I'm saying, like, you start talking about some of these individual players, they go to college. And I'm like, so why is it? You talk about a child actor, like where did I forget the guy that was in Titanic? What's his name? The lead actor,
DiCaprio.
Where did he go to college?
Nowhere, I'm sure.
I'm just saying. What I'm saying. Where did Eddie Murphy go to college?
Exactly.
Where did Chris Rock go to college? Where did Kevin Hart go to college? And I'm sitting there like, what are y'all talking about?
And that's another great point, because these colleges could have, if you now, because of NIL, it's only helping the colleges. Now, even in tennis, a Naomi Osaka might go to college because she, and play in college because she can still make money. And then the college gets notoriety and the college gets money. So why are these colleges fighting against themselves?
I'll tell you another thing. It also will make a kid think twice about going to the pros. He's like, hold on. If I go to the
pros, it has. We've seen that. We're seeing that right now.
So it's helping them. So you can't listen to a few people complaining because they can't compete. I'll tell somebody, hey man, why you complain about Alabama? You couldn't compete with them anyway. But the best thing about college sports is it's called limits. They can only have so many players. It doesn't matter. Kentucky can only have 13 guys. Right. They can't have more. So
they might pay all the wrong guys.
Exactly.
Just like the Yankees.
Look at Purdue basketball. Look at the upsets in the last 4 or 5 years that Matt Panders went through. It doesn't matter. They haven't won anything. So Get the best players you can bring your alumni together, right? And find out how you can bolster your program, and then get players that fit what you can do. Because at the end of the day, it doesn't mean they're going to win because they have them. And you got to know your resources. And as you said before, stop paying the wrong guys. Because guess what? It's the same thing as bringing the wrong guys on a scholarship.
Right.
Guys are just complaining. And that's why, Jamal, it leads to another narrative. And I hate to go there. So you just don't like the people you got to pay then. Because if we start really just having a conversation, about who you're paying, you're right, who's getting the money, it's going to make people have to be like, so what are we really talking about?
Right. Right.
Because
And
who's the one?
that's what scares me when it goes to Congress, because that's what they're thinking.
Exactly. And again, that's the part people got to fight against. Like, it's who are the, again, I don't want to make this about race, but as I said before, we only want to talk about race in politics. These white working class voters or black voters or the black caucus. It's okay to talk about it when it's a presidential race. It's okay to talk about it when it's when it's midterm elections. But when we start talking about it in sports, it's wrong.
Right, because race doesn't exist, right? There's no such thing. There's no such thing as racism.
Exactly.
We live. It's a perfect country we live in.
I was watching something, and we talked about last week on transfer portal, and it blew me away. People always, these kids they just don't want to fight through anything. They leave no matter what, right? So all of those different kids that left, that we had those different transfer portal that data on. I'd like to know the racial breakdown. I'm sorry, what's wrong with wanting to know that? I'd like to know who the kids are transferring, because we're just going to pass on certain behaviors, right? Or characteristics on those that leave when they don't like something. Let's have a real conversation about it, right? Let's talk about why we think that's happening. So I'm watching softball, the softball World Series. And again, most girls that play softball are what? They're white girls, or they're whatever you want to call it. They're not black. How about that? They're not people of color. And I forget the name of the announcer. She says, in order to get to Oklahoma, I think that's where the World Series is or whatever. She says every one of these programs live on transfers. Like, you can't get there without transfer, because they were talking about the Stanford coach and how she was not trying to do it that way, and they were trying to make a case how Stanford was harder to get into and they can't just take transfers. But you can't get to the World Series unless you have a team of transfers. Who has ever said that? And that's on the women's side of softball, because softball is highly competitive and it is a full scholarship sport. People got to understand, at these major universities, they call it head count sports. It's got to be head count sports. If you got football, which is 80, I don't know how many scholarships that is, you got to have the same number of women full scholarships as well. So scholarships of basketball, men's have 13, women's have 15. You know that. Soccer usually is a full scholarship sport at a lot of these major universities. Softball is definitely full scholarship. It is highly competitive. Highly competitive, I'm telling you. Baseball, guess what? It's not full scholarship. How about that?
Yeah.
So think about it. If you have a daughter, volleyball, 9 times out of 10 at the major universities, full scholarship. People don't know that. So when they're saying like these transfers, they're trying to pass this behavior on to certain people. Right. They don't realize I'm watching the show, being an announcer, and I hear the announcer say it's very difficult to get here without transfers.
Right. No complaints on that end. No complaints. You don't hear people complaining about the softball transfers. You don't hear it.
Exactly.
You don't hear it.
What the softball transfers get? NIL. And guess where they get NIL? Because, again, football, conference alignments, not because of basketball, football. It rules the roost, and everybody's benefiting from it.
So to wrap this segment up, you don't think it's going anywhere? You think NIL's here to stay?
I think at some point they're going to be revenue sharing on the TV deals. I believe that. If they're activists on one side and just pushing for it, if this happens, why can't anything happen? And so my thing is, and I would ask you, do you believe it's right or wrong? Like, if you had a son right now that was good enough to make $1 million from a university, or if Rand Paul, right, saying what he's saying, all right, I respect the guys that are in Congress, whatever. That's hard to become a congressman and run an election, win an election. But if he had a son that was an unbelievable baseball player, and they were telling him they would give him $3 million to go to the University of Kentucky and play baseball, Rand Paul is going to say, no, I don't want to do that. Or Tommy Tuberville, don't get me started, because I used to work with him at Texas Tech. I mean, blows me away, this guy's a senator, but whatever. And he had a son, and at the University of Auburn, that could be a quarterback, and they want to pay him $3 million because they can stay 4 years. He's going to say, no, I don't think kids should get that, and we want to play for the love of the game.
No, he won't say that. We know that, because these guys are the biggest hypocrites on earth. So we know that would not be the case if they had
No.
a kid. They're totally on the other side of the issue. So no, I think you're right, and that's interesting. You're saying that you think it can only expand because that's what makes sense, right? Like things don't move backwards. Sometimes
Sometimes they
with
do.
us when it comes to us, sometimes people make things move backwards. So that's the only thing that scares me is that take it to Congress and they don't respect the people who are able to make this money. So they might try to turn the clock backwards. But as far as natural evolution, it should only be more. It should, like you said, there should be revenue. There probably will be revenue sharing of some sort, as long as people continue to band together and do like Missouri, and they're willing to sit out and stuff like that. I think there's no way you could stop.
You got to
You
fight.
could
You
stop
got
this
to
money
fight
sharing.
for it, man. And last thing I'll say is this: I've been a coach, and here's my thing. I used to be one of those coaches that would say, "Man, this is all they deserve. They don't. No, they don't need this. This is going to muddy the waters. This will turn this. You give them this, it'll turn into that. You give them that, it'll turn into this. And at the end of the day, we live in America. Capitalism, it's commerce. Why only people at the top get to participate in making the money? When the
Right.
soldier ants are driving, they're driving the initiative. They're the engines. You can have a pretty car on the outside, a Ferrari, but the players are the engine. The university is the outside and what you make it look like. But you get inside and you try to turn the key and nothing happens. That's the players.
Right.
So you tell me, right? Do people buy a car for how fast it goes or the way it looks? What do you buy a sports car for? All of it is encompassing. So why should one part of it be worth more than the other?
Right.
That's how I look at it.
Right.
And that's how they want to make it seem. Well, you don't deserve it because you get an education. Okay, well, let's talk about what that looks like when I graduate. I got to get a job for 60 grand. So that education that's worth 80 grand a year, the most I can make when I graduate is $60,000 a year. And if I work in the next 20 years, I may be able to make six figures. Jamal, do you know that 90% of the people in this country make $80,000 or less? So you're trying to tell me that I'm out there driving the industry where they're making hundreds of millions of dollars. The NCAA tournament is $1 billion industry, and the people that drive it shouldn't participate?
Right. All these ESPN games,
Come on.
like you said, all these stadiums being built. That's off the back of the players. I just watched the Johnny Manziel documentary. You know how much money he made Texas A&M? He didn't see a penny. Well, he saw some money, but he had to do it illegally, right? That's what
Exactly.
they rather you just do it under the table.
How about the Reggie Bush thing? He's suing the
Right.
NCAA now
Right.
because what he was doing back then was NIL.
Right.
It was NIL.
Right.
Because
Right.
guess what? They didn't take back any of the money. They took back his Heisman, and they told him he was disallowed to be around the university for 10 years. What about Pete Carroll? You telling me I've been a coach? You telling me Pete Carroll didn't know what was going on? You telling me Pete Carroll had no idea?
Right.
Matt Leonard, you don't
Right.
think he got it? I mean, we keep going. You think he was the only one? And so because he won the Heisman, he was the guy they put the bullseye on? Reggie Bush? Stuff that people are doing now. And I mean, just took this man. I thank God for, I work for CBS, but I'm glad somebody gave him a chance to be on TV.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right. Right.
And I always thought it was wrong. Like, dude, how's the coach? How's the coach? Steve Sarkisian was there. He's the coach at Texas.
And what was the only reason I was watching USC football? Reggie Bush. He was the
Bush.
reason I was tuning in.
How much money did
every game.
USC, did they get fined? Did they have to pay back money for all the number 5 jerseys they sold? Did they have to pay back money for all the money that they got and the money they generated from those guys who dominated college athletics? It was must-see TV, and for must-see TV on a West Coast team is unbelievable.
Right. And we want
And
these guys to do it for free.
Did they
We want
give
these
back
guys
any
to do it for
money?
free. No, they didn't give
want to
anything
say
back.
Reggie Bush.
And he's just one example. There's so many more throughout the history of college athletics. I mean, this is what was happening, and now last couple of years we've had NIL. It's here to stay in some shape or form, and hopefully, hopefully we don't turn the clock back on this, because that's just another.
Hey, we're gonna see basketball players getting $100 million a year soon. Like when a soccer player gets to, like Messi and those guys get the money they make, because soccer's not really popular here. I don't think people understand. Like, dude, do you realize? Like, that's normal to them. That's normal. Like, you know, when we see a basketball player getting like 60 million, we like, he don't deserve that. I say, okay, if you talk about the Dallas Cowboys, Tony Pollard just got put on the what do they call the list? They put and they oh my God, my name. Anyway, they gave him $10 million. That's what they're doing to running backs right
Franchise.
now. Franchise.
Mm-hmm.
You know what the Cowboys were? $10 million.
Right.
You just got rid of
then you got to talk salary cap. What's the reason for that? You know,
billion.
Yeah, come on.
What are we like? When people start talking, I'm like, do y'all know how much money they are making off the NFL fantasy? This, that. Cowboys worth $10 billion. How many jerseys they sell? How many hot dogs? You ever been to Jerry World? You know what the parking is? Buy a hot dog. Seat license.
And Saquon, and they won't pay Saquon Barkley.
They won't play Saquon, but they give Daniel. Oh man, don't get me started, bro.
Yeah,
it's amazing. It's
crazy.
Amazing to me. What I'm saying, so NIL, when people talk NIL, I'm like, miss me. It ain't one person that don't want to be paid for their value. Even when you work at your job, if you see someone who's an executive and you see the work that you do, is it commensurate with your abilities and what you bring to the table? Most times in America, it's not.
Right. And people don't pay people who don't deserve it. These guys who are getting NIL money is because they deserve it.
Right.
It's because that's what the market is. Okay.
Just
like any other profession. Okay. And really the only people who are getting paid that didn't deserve it are the universities, the NCAA, who are getting paid off of other people's backs and not.
You know what people don't complain about? People don't complain about when they go into the dilapidated neighborhood. The house is worth $30,000. They go in there and gentrify. Now the house is worth $300,000. That's called good business. Right. That's called that's amazing.
Right.
But don't get me like I can go in like 9 million ways to talk about how this is a ridiculous subject about the haves and the have-nots and about the culture of sports. And when people talk about amateurism, it's ridiculous to me. Well, I play it for the good of the game. Dude, those dudes going to play no matter what. What is wrong with you? Ultimately, understand something. They're trying to get to the NFL. You got to understand that.
Right.
But I don't know one coach who would say, you know what, I'd rather make less money for the good of the game. Hey, don't pay me. I don't really deserve that. You know, I just, Jimbo Fisher, I'm reading about Jimbo Fisher, paid this man $95 million over 10 years. He goes 5-7 last year. And the coach says, the AD says, it's just 1 year. We don't need to. Well, what if it happens again? Why would you get this guy 10 years, $95 million? And he can't beat Alabama and get to the get to the Final Four. Now it's the Final Eight or the Sweet, whatever it is now. Like, why does he deserve that type of money? And you complain. I'm not picking out Jumbo Fisher. And you complain about the players, but you gave them 10 years, $95 million. 10 years, $95 million. You don't know what he's going to be like in year 5. He can be terrible. And guess what? If they got rid of him now, Jamal, guess what they owe him? $77 million
for sitting out, not doing anything. That's this is the decisions that are made.
Come on, man.
Come
on, college players. You got to do better.
Gotta do better. And I think
we go all day about this, man.
Yeah, we could go in all different. Yeah, it's more than NIL. It's deeper than NIL.
Culture, social ramifications, it's race, it's a lot of things that are involved. And if people don't want to peel it back and look under, I wish we had your boy Bill Roden on, boy. He probably you and I probably wouldn't get to say nothing because he'd go in and he would be right about every single subject, which is why I believe people don't like to hear Bill speak a lot of times. Which is why I believe like places like ESPN, his voice is quashed and lessened because it's too hard to hear the truth.
Right. They don't want to hear that.
And guess what else it's hard for? Not for the people who may not understand, but for the people like us who are living it every day in our community, it's hard for us to take sometimes.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? It cuts both ways.
Yeah, man. So NIL, here to stay. Stop complaining about it. Give the kids the money they deserve. They're driving this engine that makes boatloads of money. So I don't want to hear coaches complain about it anymore. Like you said, if you're complaining, give back some of your salary.
Exactly.
How about that?
Exactly. Or let somebody else have the job. Let that assistant coach sitting next to you. I guarantee you know what he's saying? Well, man, step aside. I'll go in. You know, my number one slogan used to be, don't complain, compete. Right. Don't complain, compete. And competing it's not just the money. It's coaching. It's culture. Right? That's not. Right. It's just not. It's character. You know, I think I just made up 3 C's: coaching, character, and compete. Like what I'm saying, like culture. You know, you got to coach your players. You got to compete with NIL. You don't have to have given the most money, right? And you got to get guys with character. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's part. That's part of it too.
Yeah.
You know, and
Yeah.
so again,
Just do better. Do better at your job. Okay. And don't try to slight the kids in the process. But
100%.
all right, man. That was good. You know,
That's good stuff,
I'm sure
man.
NIL will come up. I'm sure in the future we'll see what Congress does, see if any changes are made. But you know, right now the kids are getting what they deserve, and it's like you said, it's kind of a form of reparations. You know,
Oh, athletic
and
reparations for all
and
of them, not just black people, for all athletes. Like I
right,
said, it's athletic reparations. That's what I call it, NIL.
right, and then the market will, you know, if the market's too high now, it'll reset itself.
Definitely will reset.
But
That's what
at
we're
least
talking
it's
about.
in the marketplace right now where it deserves to be.
And it's new.
So yeah, it's new. So you know, everybody has to figure it out and get in where they fit in. Another great episode. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. We'll be back next week. We'll start to get
I
into
want to talk
the,
about conference realignment, man.
yeah, we got to get into realignment. We get these
Jeez.
conferences, what's going on here, how it affects college basketball, all this football movement. So we'll talk about that next week, and then you know, pretty soon these games are going to start. So we'll definitely be all up in that.
Yeah, college basketball around the corner, brother. All
All
right, man.
right,
Good to see you. Have fun, man.
appreciate it.
Peace out.